Er zijn 3 dingen in het leven van een kunstenaar. Ten eerste, te kunnen werken. Ten tweede, goed te kunnen werken. En ten derde, de grootst mogelijke weerklank bij zijn publiek te vinden.
Who's afraid of art? Tyrants and wannabe tyrants, so it seems.
Artist Alexandra Skochelenko has been sentenced to 7 years in prison by St. Petersburg's invasion, spreading false information, disinformation.
With autocracy growing, with tyrants on the roll, Balie brings together over 40 international artists, writers and thinkers during Forum on European Culture. We celebrate the subversive power of art and literature and curate works of opposition that preserve the histories autocrats want to erase and imagine the futures they fear.
So my question is, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Art against the tyrants. Not for the faint-hearted.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning. Afternoon, everyone. Apologies for your starting late. We had a few technical difficulties, but they are all solved. My name is Jante Mosselman. I'm a program editor here, and I'm very excited to be joined today by these 4 amazing artists. We're going to talk about war, we're going to talk about art. Art Under Fire is the title of this program. And we will explore how artists navigate and respond to war. I'm deeply honored to have these people here. I'm going to briefly introduce you to you. Tetyana Ogarkova, she's a Ukrainian writer, journalist and scholar, a leading voice in Ukraine's intellectual and literary circles. And together with philosopher Volodymyr Yarmolenko, she co-hosts a podcast Explaining Ukraine, which offers in-depth analysis of the war, Ukrainian society, and the country's evolving place in Europe. Anton Varga, also from Ukraine, he is part of the artist collective Open Group, and they're known for their socially engaged installations that explore memory, displacement, and the experience of war. In 2024, Open Group represented Poland at the 60th Venice Biennale with their powerful installation Repeat After Me, and you can see it also. We have it here. You can, after the program, you can watch it in the Filmzaal. Elma Čavčić is a Bosnian-born visual artist whose figurative paintings navigate themes of memory, trauma, and the inherited legacies of war. Her dreamlike, symbolically layered works serve as a quiet and powerful archive, preserving what must not be forgotten across generations. Mounira Solh, she is a multidisciplinary artist working between Beirut and Amsterdam, and her practice spans paintings, embroidery, text, video, and performance, engaging with themes of memory, displacements, and the politics of storytelling. We're going to see, they've all taken a work that they were so kind to show us today, so we're going to talk about that. But maybe before we'll delve into your work, I wanted to ask you, and maybe Tetyana, I want to ask you all this question. Maybe I would like to start with you. And I wanted to ask you, so you've all been working as artists for mostly all of your life. And I was wondering, did someone change over the last years, maybe since the full-scale invasion, maybe since the 7th of October, that changed your idea of the purpose of art? Can I start with you?
Yeah, I think that everything changes when the war starts in any place in this planet, be it in Lebanon or in Bosnia or in Ukraine, because something you cannot imagine in your ordinary life what the war represents, because it represents destruction, it represents the end of life for many friends, family, etc. And I do remember these first weeks of the full-scale invasion where people around us, our friends, artists, everybody, we lost the capacity to talk. We lost the capacity to express and to communicate about what was really happening. So it is extremely breathtaking when such kind of violence arrives to a place where you live. But what happens next is even more interesting, because when you concentrate a kind of a couple of weeks later, you are to find a completely new language, be it in visual art, or be it in poetry, or be it in what you write in prose, because you have a different attitude to what you are to express, and different level of responsibility of what you are doing. And we all say, for example, when people ask us, what is your profession? You're a professor, whatever, you're a writer, you're a poet, you're an artist, you're a painter. Our response is quite clear. First of all, we are citizens of this country. We are citizens, so we are very responsible in what we try to do and what messages we try to show. And this is the most important. So this collective thing, this is natural, it comes naturally. Collective thing becomes very important, not individual liberty. It still exists, but this collective responsibility for the destiny of the whole nation, of the whole country.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anton, also coming from Ukraine, is it the same for you? Was it different?
Well, our collective works with war topic since 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Because we need to remember that the war started in 2014 and it's just full invasion happened in 2022. And basically since 2015 we made first piece about war as well, and also it was presented at Venice Biennial in Ukrainian Pavilion. And since then we basically it's really became like hard not to talk about the new reality, because even like when you don't want to, or like you want to not be so much obvious, it's like the reality of war is so much persistent, and it's really hard to avoid, obviously. And you just have to, you're forced to change optics, right? And then after 2022, it became more obvious that it's not very often, it's not about art anymore. It's about this like ability to talk, chance to talk, like tell people, like use the chance to raise the awareness, like basically keep talking and like keep saying that the war is still there. It's not over, because that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges, like that people, especially outside Ukraine, are getting used to war.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to keep saying it's actually there, and actually it's getting more violent and getting even worse. So yeah, we definitely see it like as first of all, very personal mission, because our family there, our friends are there, it's just very personal.
Of course. Mounira, I see you nodding when
I recognize what you both said. In my case, I was born during the Civil War, so it's not like that we suddenly had war. I'm born in the war. I just heard recently from my mom when she gave birth to me in the hospital. The same day she had to go in the corridors because it was really 11 June 78, very things happening. So for us, it's just a non-stop cycle. Sometimes it's more active, and sometimes it's a bit more dormant. But you just do this, and it's clashing or exploding again. Most recently is the most recent since October 7-8 onward. Our south mostly is under attack, but also Beirut. The last war was very intense.
Yes.
I was there also, and then I had to escape. Also the image of you taking a flight up and the bombs falling down is really crazy. So what do you do with art? And also those days when it's so strong, you cannot do, you're really paralyzed, but some people are not. Some people have that, especially from Lebanon, because we're so used to it, that they start to fight, when there's a war with their own tools. So whether it's a sketch or it's a message, or they become political microphones. to try to spread the old what's wrong. I mean, why should there be more like such solutions with war? At least if I want to say it like in a boring way. Mm-hmm. So yeah, for us coming from Lebanon, it's just a cycle of
violence.
Yeah, and I'm also half Syrian, so my mom comes from Syria, and the last war of Syria was just, it's ongoing as well. Now there's a new regime, but we're like testing. Every day there's a massacre or things like that. So yeah, what do you do with art? Okay. I'm also asking myself.
Yes, of course. And you say something interesting also in the early beginning. You say, my mom only recently told me this.
Yeah.
Is it an ongoing?
Just recently.
Yeah.
Well, each time she tells me things I didn't know, but because it's so usual that we don't talk about it, and something happens and then she would mention it.
Elma, for you also, I think this what Mounira says resonates. Yes, can you?
Yeah, it's basically the same. Also born at the end of the Bosnian War, 1995, January. My mom also barely survived my giving birth to me. And I was actually like a stillbirth. I didn't give any signs of life for like 1.5 minutes until my aunt who lives now in America, she poured like -18 water over me inside of the house. They were about to throw me out of the window because I didn't give any life, but I'm here. Yeah, it's really the what you also said, Mounira. You get like crumbs every time something happens, especially now with the war in Ukraine and in Palestine right now, and a lot of places in the world. Things get heated up. They remember a lot of stuff. They're afraid of things escalating. Also in Bosnia as well now. So yeah, the stories. And why do you make art about it? Yeah, for me I realized that a lot of people didn't know anything about what happened in Bosnia, and the Netherlands had such a big role in Srebrenica that I really was like flabbergasted by it. That I told, for example, I teach also art at middle school, and when I tell kids that I was born in a war, they look at me and they're like, "But are you from the Second World War?" And I'm like, but if I was from the Second World War and if I looked this good, I probably will be locked up somewhere being like tested on like how is it possible? And they were like, there was no war in Europe after the Second World War. And I'm like, no, you're wrong. It happened that was like 22 years ago. And they were like shocked. And when I tell about concentration camps where my dad was into, and then a girl from I think Afghanistan, she came to me and she was like, I thought they only had that in Afghanistan and not in Europe after the Second World War. So there's a lot of, I would not say misinformation, but people are not informed about the things that are happening around in the world. So for me, it's also a thing to, I do as a plicht, applied to teach people about it through my art.
Maybe it's good to show some of your works. Can we have them on?
I'm very curious what's going to be on the screen.
So am I.
Yeah, and this is actually there's going to be a slide. I usually worked with. If you can go back to the other one with the yes. So I was collecting a lot of newspapers because I was trying to find war images. And this was between 2015 till 2017. And in the news article every day there were pictures of war, so I didn't have to do much for archiving. It was literally in the supermarket, and I would just like cut out things that I really enjoyed is really weird to say, but I find interesting for using in my works. And I would like eventually make a lot of copies in different colors and make. Can we go maybe to the? Let's see what's the next things that are on the slideshows. And then I would make collages of it. So these are like my sketches. And I will repaint them. And you can see a lot of different elements coming back, like warplanes, people with guns, Also, there's sometimes bunnies in it, and bunnies. There's one video of on the fall of the Srebrenica. There's like a kid holding a white bunny in his arms in the crowd, which was really weird for me to see that. And it's also a reference to the things that I eventually have experienced in Bosnia. And I was one time just sitting in Sarajevo near the cathedral, and there was this girl running around with a frozen bag, just like crazy running around. And eventually she stopped and she picked up like a white bunny out of it, kissed it, put it back, and started running like crazy with it and their parents were just like smoking cigarettes and drinking rakia and everything. And I was just like, so a lot of things are also from my own experience in Bosnia, like the weird things that I experienced. So, and now if we can go back to this is another one. This is, I usually now work with photos that I make myself or just from sketches. And for me, a lot of stories were about food. They're the most accessible or things that my parents find okay to talk about were about food. So the food scares, the like kilometers they had to walk to just get a bag of potato in very mounty areas in Bosnia. So I do a lot of still lifes with at home. I make them and then I'll repaint them with sometimes adding a little bit more heavy stuff like chopped off finger, hand. And my neighbor has a skull, like a real human skull, so I will eventually do a lot of reintroduce it or put that also in my painting. So I use a lot of my own images right now rather than found footage.
What is very interesting about your work, I think, is that you have to look twice, maybe 3 times, before you see the finger or the war. And I heard in an interview you said that beauty is also important to you. Yeah. Can you tell me about that?
There was, during the academy years, I was searching for the inside of the house of Assad because I was making paintings about it. Because I was teaching at a school for migrants, and I had a lot of students from Syria back then, and they told me a lot of stories, which really resonated also with the stories with what my parents told me. And I was just scrolling on Google, going down, until I saw on Google search 2 beheaded people on a pole, just like cut off heads. And I was just like so shocked of it. When I saw it, my stomach turned around, but somehow I downloaded them, and later on I hired a studio inside of the art academy and locked the door to paint it. Eventually it became more as an object, not as a person who was really killed at the time. So for me it was very shocking that I could go from something very heavy to not finding it anymore heavy or not that shocking anymore. And that's what I see also with people just like zapping, seeing war images and zapping on Instagram or they scroll through it. I'm like, this is happening in real life. Why are we like blocking that? So eventually for me it was important to make it first a very beautiful picture, so people will get drawn to it and they get shocked afterwards rather than being shocked the first time. So that's why I use nice colors, nice grandma's houses in it.
Thank you. Mounira, you made a work that is also called I Strongly Believe in Our Right to Be Frivolous. I don't have it here.
Frivolous.
Yes. And I love that. And you collect a lot of stories. You talk with people about what they endured.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? Yeah.
I will. It's very interesting what you said, because indeed, when the Syrian first, it was a revolution, and we had so much hope when it was happening. Because I mean, imagine this dictatorship, and people dared to speak up. So
hopeful.
Yeah, it was so hopeful for us. And at that time in Lebanon, I would see people are like hopeless because of the warlords are the ones who took power in Lebanon and became legitimate. And after that, they stole everyone's money and so on at that time. So there was only the possibility to go on exile or whatever to try to survive. And the Syrians, when they started to go on the street with their bare bodies and all of that, they brought with them a lot of hope. And because I'm half Syrian, I also went to Syria when I was a child, one time where we never escaped, but in '89 it was so strong that it was really dangerous. So we escaped to Damascus and stayed with family, and then we stayed a year. So I'm very attached because at that time, it was the first time in my life I see a park with a duck.
Yes.
Like in the war in Lebanon, if you pass next to a park, you could be abducted or killed or, so like a park with a duck, that was wow for me. And the family and so on. So I was really, in a way, all the Syrians escaped to Lebanon. A lot of activists, artists in my neighborhood, there were so many. And they brought that hope. At that time, there was also a kind of a wall between Lebanese Syrians, because also the Syrian army invaded Lebanon for 30 years. We had Syrian jails in Lebanon, okay? There's now, recently, when Assad fell in Saidnaya, in many jails, there were Lebanese who were there for 40 years. When they came out, they thought Saddam still is alive,
Oh, my Lord, yes.
Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So how about, yeah. So it's very, still very fresh. And when the Syrians were escaping to Lebanon, they had to escape to, if they are closer or they have contacts, or maybe to Jordan or maybe to other places. What else can they do at that time? But we in our neighborhood had many artists, activists, so they brought hope, and we thought they were so brave. But that was the first war being documented, as you said. So people were filming themselves as they were being killed. There was one footage among many. Family members would know their son or daughter was killed because they saw it on YouTube. Yeah. And in our civil war, this was not like that. There's hardly any images. And that's why there's a gap between what we lived and the people that came after. But when the Syrian war started, because we were seeing it, just like now with Gaza, it's now the Instagram, or you see it live, and you can't do anything.
No.
But at that time, there was one also footage of one guy who killed another one, like two fighting factions, and one guy took the heart of a guy and ate it. and was filming that, or a guy filming himself as he was dying, and so on. So that brings our wars today to another level. So what do you do with that when these means are used also as tools, but also it was Facebook that brought the people together, enabled them to come and make this revolution. But then what do you do next, right? At that time, all these questions were being asked. The Lebanese society was really in terrible shape. There were suicides. Every day there's a suicide in Lebanon, actually. And so on. And I was pregnant, making a daughter, and thinking my childhood would be the worst when the Syrian war started. So all these things, and I was also against, like many people of my generation in Lebanon, we didn't want to make art with war, because if you live in the war, you want to survive. You don't want to, really. But at that time, it brought back so many memories, and it made it so actual. It was like a mirror, because it's only a couple of hours drive, the Syrians coming to Lebanon. And I was trying to capture my own Syria also through meeting with them. So what I did, I was inviting people to my studio, making drawings and writing down our talks, just because I didn't want it to disappear, like our war is almost not valid because there's not much left documented about it.
No.
So that was for me the approach, or what I was trying to do, and I did it for my own sanity. At that time. And
thank you. Tetyana, how does this resonate with you?
Yes, so I'm extremely touched by what you describe, because a lot of things to tell here. First of all, so when you really, in current times, when you live in a war, these wars are extremely highly documented. Just 2 weeks ago, I was in a jury of docu-days in Ukraine. This is International Documentary Film Festival, and the first time in my life I was invited like a jury for long films and for short ones. And guess what? You all know Chernov and Malaletka films, who Oscar winning last year. They were guys who left, who were able to film inside Mariupol.
Yeah.
3 years ago, right? So they were 20 days in Mariupol, so they were just filming how Russian army entered the city and how do you feel inside the city. And this is a film they presented for this festival. Was even more direct in a way, because it was, the title was 2,000 meters to Andriivka. It was filmed directly on the front line and partially directly by military. So Ukrainian military having their cameras on their helmets, and you have a lot of people dying really during the film. So how Ukrainians advance and how Russians so on. So you see a lot of deaths in real time and a lot of dead bodies. And this was a winner in this category for sure, in the category of long film. So this role of documenting is extremely important. What we do when we are in Ukraine on a permanent basis. So in Pen Ukraine, I'm not from visual arts, I'm from literature.
Yes.
And from writing. So what we do at Pen Ukraine, for example, starting from 2022, after this first shock, we travel a lot to the front lines, be it to the north, to the east, or to the south. This is almost monthly travels to see people and to document what is going on. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is extremely important to be on the place and to see all the crimes and to talk to people. And every time we are on the front lines, like, let me just share just recent memory. We've been to Dnipro region 3 days ago, maybe 4 days ago. So, and we arrived with, I don't know, small village, tiny village, like Pavlograd. So maybe you don't know where Pavlograd is, but it is a city close, 50 kilometers from the front line. And we arrived to a library with books, because what we do, we bring books to shelled libraries, to damaged libraries, and we bring writers as well and poets. Mm-hmm. And you have a huge crowd of people in these small, tiny cities, towns, who come to listen to poetry, to exchange, and they never let you even read poetry, because we bring poets and we bring writers, and they never let you read a lot because they want to read themselves as well. They want to share, and you have a lot of people, let me read my poem I wrote from just a couple of months ago. So people are so eager to exchange, and the role of art. So I was extremely touched what you said. You don't know peace, but Ukrainians, we still remember times without war. Like Europeans, we still remember the times where there were no war, and we want to go back. And I cannot even imagine the situation where the whole generations live in the war, and this is natural, because yes, indeed, our friends give birth to kids right now, and they're pregnant. A lot of friends are pregnant, and they will be giving birth on the bombs in the bomb shelters. But we don't imagine this situation will last for the whole lives. But what is important on the front line, that people, they consider art to be something extremely important. Crowded places, many questions, they want to participate, they want to exchange. They're extremely thankful for us bringing poets and books. And in this moment, on the edge, you understand that culture, art, books, literature, this is not about, what you do when everything is fulfilled, I mean security, food, water, etc., etc. When people come, you understand that culture and art in particular is something extremely important in such a situation of existential threat, because these people live under bombings. When we travel to Kherson, Kherson, this is a city just in front of Russian positions. Russians, they are 1 kilometer on the other side of Dnipro River, so they are shelling with missiles, with bombs, but also with these tiny FPV drones. It's like small drone which kill civilians and civilian cars. And when we travel to Kherson, for example, we don't take even our long pen bus, so it's 7 meters, we take our family bus because it's 5 meters long, just to have less risks to be shot. And when we arrive to Kherson, the people who ask us to arrive there, for example, and to have a meeting with children, because there are children in Kherson, and there are courageous people like women who are, director of a library, and they organize every Saturday gathering for these kids, and they do come, bring books. Children are waiting for you. So we arrive with authors for children, these guys who write for children books, and we have this gathering under the ground, in the undergrounds, and a lot of emotions. People, they are eager to see that. And when Russians, they destroyed every library in Kherson, because we started in 2022 bringing books to libraries, like to Honchar library or to other libraries. But then we asked ourselves, there's no reason to bring books because there is no libraries in this city, because Russians shelled every library. And then young people, a group of young people, 20 years old, contacted us asking, guys, would you come? We organized a kind of book crossing points in the shelters, and we are interested for you to come. So we came, and they opened like 30 different points inside the city. Mm-hmm. So small in the residential houses, like in the undergrounds for civilians and for military. Mm-hmm. And we arrived there, and we saw by ourselves how important it was. Like, you have a building of 100 apartments, and only 11 families still live there. It's on Ostriv. Ostriv, it's like an island, just even closer to Russian positions. And people are still there, and old ladies come, and they are so fun to have people and to talk about art and to have these books.
It is really, really vital.
Yeah, it is vital, yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And there's one thing there's an essay you wrote about this also. And one of the things you write in it, and I want to ask you the same question, because you write and you describe how it's becoming more deserted the further you get to the frontier. And then you say for you it's also a really important question that you wonder about why these people stay. But then of course I was thinking about you myself as well, and I think why do you stay?
I think that this is important. We have an immense respect for people who are rooted in the territory, because this war, any war, this is not about territories, right? So this is not only about territories, because what is aggressors' approach, specifically Russian approach in this war, is to make people leave, to transform this land into kind of a desert. And this particular lady in Kherson, who is responsible for this library, if she decides for herself, I will move out, she has every right to do so, but there will be no more gatherings, for these kids staying in Kherson. If we, for example, we say we will move out, there will be maybe a safer future for our kids, but there will be no people. So this is not about territory, this is about life. So what make you win in a war, it's your ability to create life and to create art and to support this life. And life, it means a postman, it means somebody working in a library, it means somebody working in a shop, it means somebody being present on a railway station, or somebody repairing when there is electricity cuts, all these people who do that. And so when everybody makes this kind of effort, we preserve life on these territories, even if it is extremely difficult. Every day, every single mother in Ukraine is asked, why you don't move out of Kherson or Zaporizhzhia or Kiev or Uzhgorod, whatever. So some people ask people, why don't you move from Uzhgorod? And a lot of people move out and they have complete right to do so. But some people, they don't leave and they keep life being present, because we've visited many villages. For example, Kamyanka on the eastern Ukraine, it completely destroyed village. Not only houses are no more there, but no people, no dogs, even trees are like cut, you know, so everything is contaminated by war. When we first come, there were 5 families still living there. And we are friends with one of the families, Sergei, he's 60, and his mother, she should be something 80 something, so pretty not so young people, right? And they are there and they are trying to make, you know, to restore their house. We brought generator bought by our international friends there. They're trying to restore the life inside. And now we have in Kamenka, we have already maybe not 100, but approximately 90 families living there. People come back because they care. This is about life, you know, and this is about your capacity to defend what is yours, and this is important. And for us, it's important to be there and to travel and to help how we can.
Thank you.
Living.
Yeah. I think we're going to switch it around a little. I think after what you said, I want to go to your work, Anton, and then we come back to your work a bit later. Because you took 2 things that I think are very aligned with what Tetyana is saying. Can I have the photos that you sent me? Yes, this is a work called Untitled.
Oh, okay.
Can you tell me about it?
Oh, so you decided to show this one.
Do you want the other one?
Well, we can talk about this one.
Yeah.
We just showed this one in New York, and it's like a long list of. So back in 2015, when we started doing this project, it was like 4 of us in open group, and so like what we do in the collective, it's a practice of conversation and like thinking about things together. And this one, Untitled, is it was like like some attempt to understand the scale of war. And it was like 2015, right? So it was much before the full-scale invasion. But even then, the official number of the victims in Ukraine by UN was like something like 5,000 people only. And we were like thinking, what does it mean, like 5,000 people? Like, how much is it, right? Like, how much is it? So we decided like to start running this list of acquaintanceships, like how many people can you meet in 1 week, or like in 1 day, and like in 1 month, in 1 year. So we started writing down the like people we meet every day, or like some new acquaintanceships. And then, so we started this like in 2015. In 2017, when we first showed this work somewhere, the official number was already like 9,000 people, 9,000 like victims. And our list was like 1,000 people, something around 1,000. So like in 2 years, 4 of us like met together like a little more than 1,000 people. And yeah, so we were like really far from our target, because the idea was like we will end this list, this project, when we will be able to match the number of the victims.
And you never catch up with it.
Exactly, because 2022 happened. And it's like now it's basically infinite project.
Yeah.
Like we even don't have like now in Ukraine we don't even have like a real number of like victims. Like we have very approximate ones, and it's like far away than like 100,000. And now we were showing this piece in New York, and like we have, I believe we have like 2,700 people like in our list.
And did it help you understand the scale of it?
Yes.
Yes?
Well, I mean, that's exactly that. It's like, that's the moment when everything like this became very like visceral, very physical, right? Like every number is like, every person is like, every name that you have to remember in your life, and so you can imagine like, well, then you can imagine like every day like we have this like statistics that like 3 people were killed, or like 15. Like last week in Ukraine, like there were like few attacks on Kiev, and like each of that attack was like 70 people injured, like 10 or 15 people killed. And just like from like doing this like list for many years, like we know that like I probably will meet like 15 new people maybe in I don't know, months or something. Or it's like, it's really, yeah, it's just understanding like what's the value of a person in your life, of like a new acquaintanceship, of like one person. It's like, yeah, that's, well, yeah, I mean, the Russia is like killing Ukrainians in really manufacturing scales, like in really, like it's a genocidal, you know.
And there's another work that you brought.
Yeah, this one was, so yeah, we love numbers. Like, so this one is, we made this one in 2023, and so the name of the work is like 3 dates of like, yeah, you can see 72, 2022, 81, 2022. It's like the dates of existing, of lifespan of like 3 museums in Ukraine, which 3 of them were like destroyed in the first months of full-scale invasion. And the drawing you can see on this concrete lot is like, it's like a real 1-to-1 scale, like real, like a floor plans of those 3 museums, like overlaying each other. So one of them was like a literature museum in Kharkiv, was like destroyed like the first like months or something. Then one of them was Ohtyrka, which is like Sumy, also like very small like ethnographical museum. And the other one was, I believe, in Kyiv region. It's like when Russians came really close to Kyiv, and like on their way they were like actually burning down. They also like burned down the museum of famous Ukrainian painter, like a folk painter, Maria Primachenko, on that way. And in general, they like, I think that the number is also like, it's like 4,000 like cultural sites, and between, like among them is like 1,500 like institutions like damaged, and like more than 500 like institutions destroyed, like small museums, very local ones, and some of them also like big, like, you know, like in Kherson and Mariupol. And so yeah, that was like, and we made this piece, yeah, in 2023. So yeah, just like also like to give a chance to people like to walk, also like to imagine this, like again some like physical like idea of like how big those museums were. It wasn't like they were like real. People could walk, like enter the doors, right? Like I mean, at least
you really make it physical. Also, what is missing?
Yeah, yeah, and the place was very interesting. The location, it was Autostrada Biennale, which is in Kosovo, in Prizren. So it's like parking lot for like NATO military like equipment. So it was also like so like weird, and like just the context, you know, like people like who were like helping us to paint those like plans, they actually remember the Kosovo War and all this, like, and around all this like big warehouses, it was like basically built by NATO, and then like you can go to those like metaphors, and like what can we expect in Ukraine? Will our war sites or like will become at some point like a places for the biennials or no? Yeah,
I hope so. Yeah. Elma, you also you work in a lot of ways with trying to preserve these memories and make them stay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about this?
Yeah, for me, my parents don't really talk about it that much. Before I started making more figurative works, I really had to get it from my own imaginations. So all the things that I've heard while I was sitting in friends of my family living room as 12-year-old kid with my brother, and then a few drinks went in with my dad and the persons there, and they eventually started talking small things about food. Eventually, concentration camps talks came on, because across my parents' house there lives now a man, but he was 16 years old when he was in the concentration camp with my dad, and eventually I've heard things like that my dad was beaten up because he didn't say the right number inside of how many people were in the room, how many men were in the room, because there was one person who had like bladder issues, so he literally had to go to the toilet. So my dad said, for example, 16 persons, and it was 15, so he got into the beaten chamber and was beaten severely. And also I've heard from my uncle in Bosnia, because I've also been to Bosnia for 2 months to collect all these stories, because for me it's also very important to have the different versions of the people who were on the same side. And my uncle also told me, but he also said, like, yeah, you have to ask your dad yourself. And I was like, I'm never going to get any information out of my dad ever about this. And he was like, yeah, they thought they had the right person, but there was also another person who was a commandant or military commandant with the same name, and he was beaten for like weeks because they thought they had that person. He was just telling them, I'm not that person, this is someone else. But I never knew that. I never actually knew that my dad was beaten so much in the concentration camp, because they say it was like a working camp. There's also because I also did a lot of research on YouTube, because there's a lot of footage from the war in Bosnia on YouTube. Just people who see their sons or their husbands being killed, just walking by, and then and so very weird. And so I came across a video that I've seen so many times, but I didn't recognize my dad into it. So it was a film of the concentration camp that he was into in the time, and I saw my dad like standing in the crowd, and I was at the art academy about to have a conversation with one of my teachers, and I was just like bawling, and a friend of mine was like, what's happening? I was like trying to tell her I see my dad in a concentration video on YouTube, and she was like, what? I'm like, my dad is, I'm like, come look, this is my dad. So eventually my teacher came, and he was like, what happened? Did someone die? And I said that to him, and he was like, you go home, because I don't know how to deal with this. This is something that I've never experienced, and I don't know what you're experiencing right now, because it's very weird to see your dad in a concentration camp on YouTube, just randomly. For me, it's very important to preserve them, the stories, to make them visual, because my parents and a lot of people from Bosnia, they don't feel that they're safe to talk about it, because if you go to Bosnia, for example, Bosnia is a two-state land. You have the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and you have the Republic of Serbia, for example. And I don't feel safe in Republika Srpska, let's say it like that, like how it's called, because I know that I cannot go anywhere or just go to a cafe with my parents, for example, because my dad can encounter the person who has beaten him in the concentration camp, because they live freely among us, especially in Srebrenica. You're just like drinking coffee, and then at the next table there's someone who has killed your father, for example, because you know that person did that, because they've been neighbors before. So it's a very weird thing, and a lot of my Dutch friends don't know about it. And if they come to Bosnia, they're very weirded out that they don't know anything about what happened there. So I feel the plight to really talk about it.
Do you hope also that with making this work, it will somewhat change the reaction? Because from a teacher, I can imagine it's difficult. But then again, you would hope he would have a different reaction, of course.
I don't know what to expect. Also, yeah, because for me, and it's a thing. I grew up in a family in a country that has been into war, but
do you hope that your work changes the general ignorance of?
Oh yeah, that for sure. But I think.
Do you think it can?
I think it can, but there's finally a switch in the narrative talking about the war in Bosnia here in the Netherlands, that we don't need to get Dutch Bat involved into it, because literally cultural fundings, they say, yeah, if there's no Dutch Bat person into it, you don't get the funding because it's not important for the Dutch people. I'm like, okay, thank you for giving us an opportunity to tell it without them. So there's a lot of things happening, but it's slowly changing. But it takes 30 years, and it takes a lot of 30 years for people who experience it themselves, because I had never experienced it, to talk about it.
How is this for you? Do you, if you show your work, do you hope it changes something? Do you think it's possible?
Well, for example, when we did the Lebanese pavilion the last year, it was, for us, it became really an important statement that we exist, we are here, despite all the problems, and the difficulty and so on. So sometimes even just being there, is already a difference. Because we were it was highly being bombed, especially the last weeks of the Biennale before it closes, and that was just mind-blowing. We're having this exhibition and the country is being flattened. I mean, it's just crazy. At the same time, there was so many things happening lately, and I was also filming in the south, in Sur, Tyr. The story I was working with was, for me, a way also to escape that blunt reality, or try to rescue myself by going back in history to the ancient world time, because, we have all these, the Phoenicians and so on. And
we went back to the myths.
Yeah.
Yes, can you?
Yeah, I can.
Tell about it.
Right, so actually, I became interested in it after there was the explosion of the harbor, whereby, also this is the area where I live and so on. And the crisis, there was also a time where we were demonstrating, and it gave so much hope. But then they took it from us, and Corona came and so on. And there was the explosion, and then there was the earthquake that destroyed in Turkey, Syria, and also in Lebanon. It came there, and you just how many crises are
you have?
What the fuck? So I started to read about the Phoenicians. It came like a magical moment. I was in an ancient site. We spent the night there with the moon, and I was like, oh my God, it's such a strong connection to the past. So I want to read again about it, but I used to block it because the way they teach it at schools, or the narrative around it, might be a bit, to certain groups, nationalistic or something, and that's definitely what not interests me in this. But then I also, since my childhood until now, there has been much more written about the Phoenicians, and I came up to read some really good books. And then the story of Europa. And so you cannot imagine, but the name of Europa comes from a Phoenician princess who was in Sur, Tyr, and Zeus saw her from the skies. Of course, according to the myth, he disguised in a bull so that his wife isn't jealous.
She's always jealous.
And then he came down and he seduced her, and slowly he kidnapped her. And he took her to Crete. Actually, I went to Crete, And when you go to Crete, everyone knows that story. It's like everywhere, children's books, whatever. We hardly know about it in Lebanon. We know more, like the myth of Elissa is very famous. You have restaurants called Elissa, Phoenicia, but of course you don't have a restaurant called Europa and giving you hummus. No. That would be weird, right? So anyway, so people are very, it's like if you go to Sur, to the ancient site, you will right away know about Europa. So it was something I had forgotten about, and I decided to focus my research about her myth. She's also on the €2 coin of Greece. So if you take the €2 and the classical representation or the typical is she's on the bull, taken on the back of a bull in the sea.
Yes.
Yeah. But the story is beautiful also, how they went in the sea, who they encountered, and so on. And in the National Museum of Beirut, which was actually on the demarcation line, so during the what is called the Civil War, that spot was like no-go. All the fights were on this demarcation line. Yeah. So also a lot of the works were used for snipers to hide behind, and some traces are still there. So there is a mosaic from Roman time of that bull with Europa on the back. Interestingly, when they use mosaic, usually the background is beige and the bull is brown, not white. So I wonder, because in the story, in the Greek, so the Greeks have written that story 100 years after. And even the historians, if you check, it's not like matching perhaps when it really happened. We don't know. But apparently myth is even more real than reality, and people kill each other for myth, right? Anyway, so...
Who controls the story, of course.
Yeah. And for me, this became the topic, like the center of the story, and I wanted to like, I'm not like making a classical film or anything, but like film scenes and make a boat according to Phoenician way, and then rescue Europa from being a victim, because in all the narratives she is the typical victim. And even Rembrandt painted that scene, because there was a time around those days that Orientalism, you know, it was a bit of Orientalistic as well in the 16th, 17th century to paint back those scenes. And you have also painters from like Rubens and so on who painted. I was very interested to see how they looked at our part. It was during the Ottoman Empire. So always those scenes also looked with buildings that have domes. Rubens painted the story of the Murex shell, so those Phoenicians from Lebanon. The Dutch don't know it, and they're always surprised, and it just makes me laugh because we always seem that we are the trash bin of civilization, but actually they don't even realize that even your Greek mythology came from like all these encounters, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so, and then Europa came from Lebanon. Sorry, but yeah.
So it's no, it's fantastic because it is really changing.
So I took back that story and playfully made things with it. Like for me, he doesn't kidnap her; she kissed him.
That's fantastic,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's love, but how do you create that love? It's not that I'm against love. On the contrary, I think you need love, but how do you create the narrative around it? Who did what and how? So yeah, the work was focused around it, and I think then it's sometimes if you cannot do, because I did works where it was so immediate, and there was time, like what you said with your drawings, they have to be beautiful.
Yeah.
And this is something now I'm thinking more and more about. With Roxy, we were talking about it last days. That, what if the drawing is beautiful? So what? Because I definitely don't want to do that. No. I really am against this. But now that I'm almost 50, I mean, you also slowly understand things in a different way.
Right.
So it's, I think, also about always learning something new and like just like questioning yourself all the time, what you're doing and how and so on.
Maybe this is a good moment to go to the work that you brought as well.
Okay, this is really direct, but
yes,
I mean, more or less. Yeah.
It's good to show the variation.
Yeah.
If we can have the video. I just need to get one.
That one, yeah.
This is part of your work. It's a longer video, and it's called "Now Eat My Script." And I really wanted to show it because I think the questions you ask in this video are questions you will really, really deal with. How to capture trauma. But first, I wanted to ask you, why do you need to capture it? What is your personally? Why do you want to capture it, and why?
So I think this was again the time when there was this chemical attack that happened. At the time, Obama and the group there said the red line is the chemical attack.
And then,
of course, what does it mean anyway? What would they have done, and what would have been the consequences? But people felt left out, and that also the suicide of this person that went viral, and a lot of aggressive things that you would see, that time the American ship came to Beirut, was preparing to hit above us to Damascus, which was also scary on its own, and so on. So, and I was reading, I read an interview with Mahmoud Darwish at that time in Bomb magazine, where he writes about when he was under siege and there was nothing else he could do. So what you also said, I think, and all of you, what you were conveying is that when this is the situation, what else can you do? So there's nothing else you can do. And then there comes the need to speak about it or do something with it, or else you're like completely stuck. So this is where these things came from, and for me it was also a connection with childhood. Or there was a time I did a work about how they slaughter sheep or cows in Lebanon, and the bad conditions and and so I was like mixing up a few things
to make
where this story came out. But I don't know if I like it anymore. I'm like, I don't want to see this now.
No, I do, because I think
today, for example, the last 2 weeks, we have seen the TV presentators in Iran as she was talking. So this was double shot, right? The media is showing in a broadcasting, and you see it being bombed.
Yes.
So it's also a strategy to show, we are so strong, we can even kill you live when you are broadcasting it. We have had that strategy also in Lebanon, that last winter.
Yes.
We've seen such events. So I think this is already passé, what I wrote there, because the war has finding so many new, and now the AI and so on, with the drones, you're being constantly observed. For example, the Lebanese are very good in making jokes. That's how we deal with all what's happening. So we have all the time this drone coming and buzzing, and then they observe everything. And like one guy makes a joke, and it goes, of course, via WhatsApp or whatever. Hey, can you find me my black jeans? I can't find it. Like at least be useful to me on that moment, And I think every few years we go to another level. And how do you deal with that? But I still like very much the point, what you mentioned, that we should still preserve or recreate beauty each time the war level is higher, or like what you mentioned, that you go there to preserve the books, keep the people in the villages. Yeah, some people sacrifice themselves by staying, and they are consciously doing that, For example, my parents in the war, that's what they were doing. We consciously stayed. But how many generations can maintain that? That's another question. And the need to share is also a way for you to survive, I think, as a person, to be able to deal through this. Because we are artists, but we are also humans. I mean, so we have that. We also have to deal with it.
Anton, I want to ask you, because you in the work that we are showing, you ask people, of course, to talk about what happened to them, their trauma, and you do it by using sounds. Is that a way maybe also to escape the dilemmas that come with how to capture it?
Well, yeah, that's actually obviously we also had this like the dilemma how to approach the person who just like left her like hometown because of like extreme bombarding, and she came to another part of Ukraine and like with the family having nothing. So obviously you don't want to use them or like use their trauma, and but then like we encountered this their attitude that like for them it's actually for people we filmed, they wanted to participate because it was the way for them to reclaiming some agency, you know, after being just like victims and like being forced, like being incapable of like doing anything. Just they just run away. And so now when they were like a little like in safe situation, for them it was important for other people like to know about them, to know what's happened. And like as I said before, it's all like it's all about for those people who are not like really fighting on the front line. It's for the other people, it's you help frontline, you donate, and you just like trying to like to talk about war like whatever you can. So for them it was like, yes, reclaiming the agency, they want to participate, because for people in Ukraine it's very important like that the world is aware of what's actually happening there. Like for people outside of Ukraine, don't forget about, for them not to stay alone against Russia. And so that's very important. And also like the second part, it was also like, it was also healing experience for them. And the one we're showing there, it's like was filmed in 2024. And for the second part of this project, we filmed people outside of Ukraine. And it was like 2 years after the invasion. And in general, the feeling was different than like the first part when we filmed in 2022. So 2 years after the war, people were like, actually, like some of them already found a way how to deal with their like with their position, with their like refugee position, with their memories. But then, but they were like still just like thankful, like many of them. And I remember like this person, Ludmila, in Berlin, in this like huge refugee camp in Tegel in Berlin. She was just like, she was just very thankful that she had this occasion again, like to go to that moment and like to explicitly tell all the details and like maybe cry again. She actually was crying for like 5 minutes nonstop. But then like she said like thanks for listening. And I'm very also, she was like very grateful like for this chance to share and help. Yeah, because that's like in Ukraine, that's you want to participate in any other, like in any possible chance to somehow, to stand against, to participate and struggle.
Mm-hmm. As far as my sort of understanding of this goes, it really breaks my heart. Also, so I was wondering how do you deal as a listening to all these stories, and that's also for all you, and also very much for you, Tetyana. So how do you stay sane? You used the word crazy a little. I wrote it down a little while ago.
Yeah, you don't stay sane. I don't think like anyone is like after. No, you cannot. And I think, well, I think at some point I started like moderate like the amount of the news or like the amount of like social media I'm like watching. And just like reading the news, not really like checking all the Telegram accounts with all the uncensored, like really like some very, very often like very like very violent content. Like it's just there. It's very accessible on the internet. Which is also like, it's also one interesting moment of this war. Like basically the war started in 2014, and in all this, like 10 years, 11, the social media is also like developed, right? And obviously like Facebook, Instagram can block many things, but then like the new ones appeared, and like for example Telegram became like a big thing, like where you can really post and see a lot of like really disturbing content, and like so yeah, this consumption you have to, at some point I decided to cut it out a little from my life, because it's actually, it's really hard to stay sane. Yeah. And then just like to deal with the real people, like more, like their stories, less of this, like, less consuming of the war, and just like more like being in this relation of like just listening to the real, like to the real experience.
Thank you. Tetyana, can I ask you the same?
I guess we have a lot in common with what was said about Lebanon, and humor is one of the things which put us together. We have a lot of jokes. I remember a lot of articles wrote about how do we stay strong facing all these challenges, like these famous jokes. Do I keep my underwear when I go to sleep in case of air alert? Because in the morning when they find my body, it'll maybe be better to be in the good underwear, not naked or whatever. So things like that. But I would like to say what seems important to me when we talk about trauma and when we talk about this war experience. One thing we should not forget is that people living in such circumstances, like in Bosnia many years ago, like in Lebanon, like Ukraine, this is simply not normal. So our focus should be not only about how to justify, how to explain trauma, but how to deal politically with the situation and to bring normality to these places. I can understand this is difficult for many places, but we as artists, as people who talk, people who write, people who create things, we should not focus not only on consequences, artistic, dwelling into these important experiences, but how to deal with it. What should be done today in order to bring all these people to normality? These people in Lebanon, in Ukraine, I don't know, in any other place, should not suffer. And there are some things to be done. And we as artists, we should not aestheticize only this experience of war, but to act. I was talking about responsibility in the beginning of our discussion. So this is also our responsibility to make all necessary pressure on, politically, military, and on the level of civil society, how all these places should be helped in order for all these people to be back to normality, and for that impunity which you were talking. I was very touched by what you were talking about Bosnia, when you can meet people who were dealing all with Srebrenica and all these people, and so they're the neighbors, and they were committing crimes, and now they're still living. So sometimes a lot of things can be done to put an end to an impunity of the aggressor, be it Serbs, be it Russians, be it any other people who are doing these things. So, and I think that together, this kind of solidarity between people, we can do a lot of things, as artists, as well as people who have their voices, intellectuals, writers. And this is an important task, and we should think about this, how to find solutions and to put an end to this.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm going to see if there's any questions from the audience, and then I wanted you to read the poem as the last bits before we go out, if that's okay. Okay. I'm coming towards you if you want to ask.
Okay. I actually have 3 questions to Anton, because I'm currently writing about a play that is or about the performance that is out here. I'm looking at artistic strategies that affirm experience people are unable to talk about. So when I first saw the performance, I felt, okay, that fits pretty neatly. And maybe the first question, it's more of a general question, what is it that you're looking to say, or one second, what is it you're looking for in order to create these performances? What are the elements that let you say, now this is what I want to put into place?
How do you select? Yes. Okay.
How I...
No, not the general framework of one work.
Well, for this one, for the Biennale one, is we were like, for a while we were just like thinking how to talk about war. Again, not to going to any like war porn, not to using like any graphic images, right? Not to use any like acid images that like you're accustomed to see every day on the news, right? Like so, and then at some point we came to the idea of the sound, like what kind of subtle element is sound is, but it's also actually it's very interesting because like there's like from this research like on trauma that actually trauma is really the two main elements that trauma is being conveyed is like the smell and the sound, and only after like the graphic image comes. But even without that, like we were just interested in this, like, okay, how we can talk about war, not using this like the images that everyone like actually being used to, and like maybe some people even have allergy to like just seeing those, like especially outside of Ukraine. And then like we found out at some point, I will be very short. At some point we found out that actually sound is very crucial element of war. Just like for you to get through the combat zone and to survive, because there are like different scenarios you have to like do, like, and they will be basically depend on what kind of weapon is used next to you. So civilians at some point, they just need to learn to recognize different weapons by the sound, and they like basically civilians are being forced to become these experts in different sounds in order like to survive. And yeah, because like if there is a ballistic missile, you just have to like listen to the air alarms, of course, and you really don't have much time. You have to really find a place for like with the two walls in your apartment. If it's just a mortar shelling, it's like you will hear this like whistle, very specific, and you have probably like 3-4 minutes to hide. So like it's really like sound is crucial. And then like we built the whole thing around this, and obviously the sound is also about this like trauma and experience and the story that particular person went through. So yeah, it was like it's all about like how to talk about war like without talking about war, right? Like indirect way.
I know you have more questions, but maybe...
Yeah, we can talk later. It's fine.
I thought so too. Is there anyone else who wants to ask something? You don't have to, but... Yeah?
So, Mounira, you said something about being in a political bubble, right? In one of your pieces, the uncle watching the TV and saying, I'm different. Do you have examples of where your art breaks bubbles, right, or reaches decision makers that may be enabled to accept the reality of art of war? Sorry.
Some examples. I'll bring an element. of the response, stating that we have already many examples where a piece of art or a destiny of somebody coming from art, and a poem I will read will also talk about that, made some differences. I'll read a poem of our friend. Her name is Victoria Amelina. She's a Ukrainian poet, and our friend, we traveled a lot together to the front lines, and she also traveled alone. She was, 35 years old young mother at the day of the full-scale invasion, and she was writing primarily not political, novels. She was also of two novels. But when the war started, she was abroad, by the way. She was in Egypt with her family, and she took the decision to come back to the country. So she came back to the country, leaving her family behind, her husband and their son, and she started traveling inside Ukraine to document Russian crimes, specifically in the eastern region, in Kharkiv region, with the association Truth Hounds. And we went a couple of times together to Kherson as well, and to other places. And Victoria started writing poetry. She never wrote poetry before the war, and this is also to address the question we're talking about, how the art is possible during the war. She started writing poetry. Mm-hmm. And she was shy, and she was not publishing this poetry. She was only publishing it on her Facebook, like for friends. And she was not convinced that she had talent to write poetry. And then 2 years ago, specifically, on the 27th of June 2023, she went to Kramatorsk. 2 days before, we were at the cultural festival in Kiev. Book Arsenals is the most important cultural festival, book festival in Ukraine, which is held even during the full-scale Russian invasion. And she was reading poetry on scenes, etc. She went to Kramatorsk, and she was with Colombians, with Colombian delegation, with some people, one politician, one journalist, etc. And it was a Russian missile who hit this restaurant, and she was killed at that moment. And we went together with our friends to Dnipro. She was evacuated to Dnipro. She was in the coma. She lived for 4 more days, and then she died. And her poetry, it was published after her death in Ukrainian, and then it was translated into into English, into French, in many other languages. And she was writing in English directly. Her book, which is published today, the title is "Looking at Women, Looking at War," and she was writing about women in Ukrainian resistance facing Russian aggression. And this book is published now in many languages, in English and in French, and I really invite you to find this book. It is extremely important, and its Ukrainian version doesn't exist. And 1 day ago, 2 days ago, this book got a George Orwell Prize. This is political, and it changes minds. And Victoria poems were quoted in European Parliament and in other parliaments as well. And she never considered herself to be an important poet, even, So art can change minds. And I'll read this poem because I promised to Jante to read this poem. This is about truth, and this is about art, and this is about testimony, and about the role of art during the war. So it's translated into English by our good British friend William Blaker. He translated a lot of Amelina texts. So, in this strange city, only women bear witness. One of them tells me of a disappeared child. 2 of those tortured to death in the basements. 3 have heard nothing about rapes and look away. 4 of them mention screams from the police station. 5 of them inform me of execution in the courtyard. 6 of them speak but incomprehensibly. 7 still recite the food supplies they have left. 8 of them say that I'm lying. There is no justice. 9 talk amongst themselves on the way to the cemetery. And I'm on my way there because I know everyone in this town. All the dead are my dead. All survivors are my sisters. 10 of them speak of a man that survived, who had also been held. He too can testify. I knock at his door, but his neighbor comes out and speaks on his behalf. It only seems that he survived. Better speak to the women. Victoria Milina, testimony.
Thank you very much, and thank you all very, very much for being here. I'm going to say a few promotional things, because it's very important as well. So Mounira, your work is now visible in the Bonnefante, right? In Maastricht.
Yeah.
It's only a short train drive away, so please go and visit, because it's absolutely incredible. Elma, you have a show at Nationaal Museum Kamp Vught, together with photographer Robin de Puy, and there the story of your family history is told.
And also Fotodoc Utrecht opening Thursday.
Okay, thank you. Anton, it's only over there, so please go and look at the work Repeat After Me.
Yes,
it's
very close.
Very close. And if they want to see more, go to the website.
Oh, yeah, well, there's a website. Yeah.
There's a website. Tetyana, can you say again the name of the podcast that you do?
We do podcast in English, explaining Ukraine with Volodymyr Yermolenko. I also have a podcast in French language for those of you who accidentally speak French, L'Ukraine face à la guerre, because French is my first language. There will be, we published a book in Ukrainian with Volodymyr,
it's for sure.
Live on the Edge. This is in Ukrainian, but it'll be soon published in European languages. We already signed with French editor. It'll be published in February 2026 in French, and we sell all the rights for other languages, and we do hope there will be also English editor to follow up, and maybe this book will be during next year. We hope they will be published in English.
Thank you. The work I'm sitting in front of is by the Crimean artist Nikita Krasov, who is also painting in the Pleinzaal. And outside there's a work of Dries Verhoeven, if it's still there, because the police is about to take it away, they said, because of the complaints they've been getting. So maybe so much for Art Against the Timers. No, I'm kidding. It was absolutely incredible to speak with you, and I really, really admire the work that you do. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you very, very much for sharing. And thank you very, very much for listening. There's a lot of programs going on. You're very welcome to go to anything else you want to see during this day with the ticket you have for this program. And I hope to see you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.